Welcome, everybody. We are going to be starting our new unit, which is on natural selection. We just finished learning about what evolution is and the facts that support evolution. Now we're moving on to natural selection. So everything again starts with this scientist, Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin in the 1830s went ahead and saw the world before he joined seminary school. He saw the world by getting on the HMS Beagle, took a trip around the world. The major stop that he made, we know, was at the Galapagos Islands. And he saw that this little tiny island out in the middle of nowhere, just off the coast of Ecuador on the equator, had this unbelievable diversity of life. And it got him asking so many questions, which led to his theory of evolution. And evolution, as we know, is that all organisms change over time. Where he went further was that the thing that drives evolution, the mechanism for why evolution happens and works and is more than a theory, is that this happens because of natural selection. Natural selection happens in 4 steps. There's overproduction, genetic variation, competition, and then at the end, there needs to be a successful reproduction. So, overproduction. What is overproduction? Overproduction is that the species are going to be producing a large number of offspring with the understanding that not all of them are going to be able to survive in the environment. So that is overproduction. I have 2 short little videos that emphasize overproduction. During class, we will be looking at other examples. So here is the first example, and here we go.
Raising young takes energy and resources, and many birds have only enough to raise 1 chick at a time. This Nazca booby, just days older than his brother, wants to make sure that chick is him. He's plotting to become an only child. It's a Cain and Abel power struggle, set before either was born. Their parents courted, with beak pointing and an exchange of gifts. That led to a pair of eggs. And Cain was their firstborn. 4 days later, his baby brother. Cain has one goal in mind: to get his kid brother as far from the nest as possible, where he is sure to die. It's a ruthless act of self-preservation. The helpless younger chick has only one hope: Mom. She does nothing. Her youngest faces certain death from dehydration or predator. She's not cruel. She's only got enough in her to raise 1 chick. The other was her insurance policy. Cain kills Abel, and with him, the competition. Now Mom is all his. He killed his brother so he could live.
So, in overproduction, there are too many offspring for the parent to be able to help and survive. In this case, there was just 2 offspring, but 1 was perfect, 2 was too many. That is not a super common example of overproduction, but it is a very powerful example of overproduction. A more common understanding example of overproduction is going to be happening when you look at very large numbers of offspring being born at the same time. So here is another example. Here we go.
This is the night they've all chosen to return. The dawn ends. "50 days later, hundreds of thousands of 2-inch-long turtles soldier their way to the surface. For this newborn and his band of brothers, it will be their longest day. Only 5 out of 100 will make it through the next 8 hours. Beyond the barricades of driftwood, open battlefield, 120 feet of deep sand. The enemy forces are waiting. So close, and yet so far. At last, the safety of the sea.
So the environment cannot support hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these turtles going into the environment. And by natural selection, because there are so many turtles being born, many of them become the food source of the predators that are there, yet the best ones are able to make it to the surf, get into safety, and natural selection does then continue. So that's overproduction. Next is genetic variation. So these babies are being born through reproduction. The parents always, through reproduction, pass their traits on to their offspring, similar as how you got traits from both of your parents. While the offspring develops, sometimes mutations happen. And sometimes these mutations can be helpful. Sometimes mutations can be hurtful. And we see often hurtful ones, such as birth defects, that are not helpful, obviously hurtful, but sometimes these mutations have no impact at all, even though they did happen. So what is happening here is that we have slightly different variations on a theme. Here we have finches. One of the main animals that Darwin studied while on the Galapagos Islands were these finches, and he captured these birds, and while he was back on the boat on the Beagle, he would make these sketches of these finches. And what he was noticing was that all of these birds, even though they were finches and their body types and size and color were all very, very similar, he saw that their beak shape was quite a bit different. And the reason why their beak shape was quite a bit different was because of the food that they ate in order to survive. This leads us next to competition. Competition, a lot of people think that competition is the main part of natural selection because they see that this is that struggle to survive. So animals are competing for food. Animals are competing for the opportunity to mate so that reproduction can happen, so that the best traits are passed on to the offspring, and that species can continue. Here is a short little video on competition.
A lone Brevis zebra. He weighs close to half a ton and could go for 3 days without drinking. Like the macaques, his forebears were refugees from the advancing Sahara. The land is scrubby and dry. But this stallion has claimed it as his own. He's been waiting months for visitors. Female visitors. If they like his territory, they might stay a while. It's his first chance to mate for a very long time. Hardly a success. Perhaps his visitors are looking for a more impressive partner. There's another setback. The females were being followed, a posse of young males, everyone a rival. It's time to separate the men from the boys. One by one, the stallion sees them off. The females had ringside seats, and his prowess has not gone unnoted. Machismo gives way to tenderness. Around here, you have to take every opportunity, be it for food, for water, or for mates. Female grevies are a fickle bunch. The herd had decided to move on. All of them. The stallion may never see them again, but there's a chance that one is now carrying his foal.
So the male had to compete for the opportunity to mate, and because he was the strongest, because he was able to win that competition, he won the right to mate with that female, to pass on his traits to the offspring, and the offspring that would be born would then have those strong traits. Here is another example of how a fish is able to compete by getting food. And this fish is really interesting because it has figured out a way to get food in a way that other fish can't. So here we go. We'll go ahead and fast forward a little bit here so that we get to the part that we're getting at. What I want you to notice is that the fish has grabbed a clam and is now going back to his house, basically. Here we go. So this fish is using the rock here to try to open up this clam, putting the clam into his teeth. Notice the shape of the teeth. That is the shape of the teeth there is coming from the genetics of his parents. So there is a lot of trial and error in trying to figure out how this fish is going to be able to crack this thing open. And he's going to continue to try and continue to compete and figure out a way to do this. Now, if he was not very good at cracking open this shell, he would not be surviving. But this one has the ability to crack open these shells. And as he is cracking open the shells, he's able to use his powerful jaws and get the food that is in the clam. The last step, and I believe that this is the most important step, which is successful reproduction, because if a successful reproduction cannot happen or does not happen, then that species is going to go extinct. So the animals or plants that have the best traits, the best adaptations to their environment, they're going to be the ones that are going to be growing to adulthood, winning that mate, and being able to reproduce. Here is an example of how a clownfish, similar to Finding Nemo or Nemo, works together so that the female can have a successful reproduction of laying her eggs.
It looks just right, but it's a long way from home. And he can't move it by himself. So the pair now work together. A little adjustment to the anemone's tentacles, and the shell is tucked in. The female lays. A safe nursery at last.
So, successful reproduction in that example was that the female clownfish was able to lay her eggs so that the next generation of clownfish can continue by living. Well, that is natural selection. Here are the references where I got this stuff from. We will be breaking up these 4 different steps of natural selection over many days. We will be doing activities. We will be watching videos to further explain these things. So welcome to natural selection.